All right, welcome to Foregone Trails. My name's Tyler. Today we're talking about steering. All right, so you might be asking yourself, why is this like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I don't know. I've talked about steering a bunch so far, and we're not that far in on this project. Well, I ran into some issues, and that's what happens when you run into issues. You resolve said issues with something that you've already done 2, 3, 4 times. What is the issue? The issue was, if we look at this, here, let's set it here. So if we look at this piece here, this is your pitman arm. So this is what attaches to your steering box, and then it comes here to your drag link, and it comes all the way down, and this attaches at the axle itself. And then that comes across here and attaches at the other side of the axle, which is called your tie rod. So it ties the axle knuckles together. What my problem was is that with the stock Jeep Commando steering box, the length of the drag link was not correct. Come back over here, I'll show you one more time. So what I ended up doing as a temporary fix, I actually cut both of these ends shorter so I could cinch this down as far as possible. That allowed me to attach the drag link from the knuckle to the pitman arm, but what it did also was actually limit the amount of steering I had from left to right. So I wasn't able to get a full amount of swing and steering out of this drag link. Also, I didn't really feel comfortable how I had to shorten this setup. And so what I decided to do was install a 1-ton steering link system. So let's dive into that.
6.5 hours later.
Diving in to the 1-ton steering. Now, what I ended up doing with this is I did keep it under knuckle. So if we're talking about under knuckle versus over knuckle steering, this is what it looks like. Come here, I'll show you. You can see the tie rod end here is under the knuckle. So this is the steering knuckle, and that tie rod end is on the bottom. So over the knuckle, this would have been flipped and been sitting up here. Let's look, and I'll show you real quick what an over-the-knuckle steering looks like. On the yellow Jeepster, we actually have over-the-knuckle steering. So you can see here, the steering knuckle is located right here, and you can see that tie rod end is actually on the top side and runs a lot higher. That's the really big difference between an under-the-knuckle versus over-the-knuckle when it comes to your tie rod ends. You might be asking yourself, why did I go with under the knuckle on this one and over the knuckle on that one? The big piece for me was, one, on the yellow Jeepster, I have some leaf springs in the way, and I needed to go over the knuckle so that way the tie rod and the drag link would all clear the leaf springs and everything would work because I'm on a spring over axle configuration. Now on Krusty, I went under the knuckle, and the reason I did that, if we look here, come on. Come join me. I talked about this. I talked about one of this. I talked about this in my 3-link video a while back. What's really important when you're creating your suspension is that you want your drag link and your panhard. Okay. And what's really important when you're designing a 3-link is that you want your panhard and your drag link to be at the same angle. Let's pan under here. And you can see here that this is your drag link. It runs from here to here. And then this is my panhard bar that's gonna run from there all the way to that one out there. And so running this under knuckle allowed me to actually match these two angles perfectly. The other thing when it comes to this style of suspension system is you want to make sure that your panhard bar is as long as possible. And so if I moved that panhard bar over the axle to allow me to run over the knuckle steering, then I would have to shorten that panhard bar or move the frame side bracket, which is already completely in place. And so the simplest solution for me was to go ahead and attach under the knuckle instead of over the knuckle when it comes to steering. The other component on these Jeep Cherokees, and this is something I wasn't able to find anywhere online, is about clearance issues. So if we come down here, when you move this from under the knuckle to over the knuckle, this whole rod actually runs right here and runs into this sway bar link, runs into this coil mount, so you have to cut a bunch of metal out, make a bunch of clearance, and make things really fit a lot tighter, and so it doesn't quite clearance the way it should. I was hoping that if I run it under the knuckle, I wouldn't have to do all those clearancing. As I went through this process, one of the things I figured out though is that the actual tie rod itself, if I ran a straight tie rod, that it would actually hit the differential on full lock one way or the other. So I had to go ahead and add about a 10-degree bend here. You can see a little bit of a bend in the tie rod from this side to that side. I probably could have gone with about a 7-degree bend here, but this allowed me to clear everything, so everything clears under knuckle. I'm gonna have clearance at full stuff that it'll clear this pan hard bracket here, and so I'm really hopeful that this setup was gonna work nicely. We talked about under the knuckle versus over the knuckle steering and why I chose under the knuckle on crusty and over the knuckle on yeller. Somebody commented yeller dog, so on yeller dog, over the knuckle on that side, but under the knuckle over here. The other thing I did is I upgraded from the stock tie rod ends all the way up to a 1-ton. So if we look at these, come on, you can see here just how much larger this 1-ton tie rod end is versus the stock tie rod end. So that should be a lot more durable, handle a lot more abuse off-road than this piece here. I also, all of this steel is 1.25 inch, 120 wall, DOM, super heavy duty steel. So this should be able to hit and keep on rolling. That is another thing that made me do this entire process, changing from standard up to a 1-ton tie rod end. Now that you've heard all of the explanation about why I chose 1-ton tie rod ends, chose under the knuckle, did all of the things compared to doing over the knuckle, let's talk about how to actually install this into your Jeepster. We're gonna film this like I'm doing this now. We'll insert B-roll as needed, and then we'll just go from there. Step 1, I love steps. I love processes. All right, take the tire off. All right, I already did that. The next step, I went ahead and installed these off-road anonymous toe-in alignment tools. So what you do with these, you basically, they match all kinds of different bolt patterns. This was the best deal I could find on this particular tool. So you just tighten this down, and then what we're gonna do is actually set the toe to where we want it. And so the way you do that, you take your trusty tape measure and you run it from one end all the way to the other. Okay, and then this tape measure is going to sit here. Then we're going to take our second trusty tape measure and we're going to run it along the back side here. Nope. There we go. Okay. Now that we've got both these tape measures set up, they're ready to go. What you want to do is you want to set about 1/8 toe in. And so what that means is that the front of the tire is going to be closer together than the back of the tire by 1/8 of an inch. So if we come here, the front of your tire should be, in this case, it's going to be 63 1/4. And then so the back is actually is 63 5/8. So it's going to be, or no. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 63 5/8. 63 1/4 up front, 63 5/8 in the back. So that means the front is actually 1/8 of an inch in, which is exactly what we want for proper toe in on your alignment. Now that I've determined what that's going to be, the second step to this process is actually taking your tape measure again and measuring from the center of one tie rod end to the center of the other tie rod end. Okay. So in this case, it's about 52 1/2. Now that the tie rod end center to center has been measured, I know exactly how long I need to cut the tie rod itself. Let's get that cut out. Okay, so with knowing that the tie rod needs to be 52 inches center to center, I put the one end of the tie rod here and the other end here on my workbench, and I measured that out to 52 center to center. And so then I measured from where the actual tie rod itself is going to need to go from this side here all the way over to this one here, and that'll go ahead and give me 39 1/2, I believe. I'll have to remeasure before I cut, but so you can see, just kind of set that up so I know exactly how long that's going to need to be. I'll cut the piece of steel, tack this in, and go on to the next piece, which is going to be removing the old tie rod and drilling out the holes. Now, if you'll remember, earlier in the video I showed you the big difference between the small tie rod end and the large tie rod end. And so with that also means that we needed a 7-degree reamer to ream a new hole into the knuckle itself so that... So we had to ream a 7-degree hole into the knuckle so that the larger tie rod end will actually fit and work appropriately. So let's show you some sweet B-roll of that. Whew. Drill's getting a little hot. Didn't catch that one on camera, but let's hope this thing isn't toasted. Ryobi. All right, now that I've never steered you wrong, 4, 5, 6, however many steering videos I've done, hopefully you enjoyed this 1-ton steering video so that you now understand how to install that into your Jeep Commando or Jeep Cherokee, because really this is the exact same idea you would utilize if installing this into a Jeep Cherokee. Some of the different pitfalls and hurdles that you might have to overcome when installing a steering system like this. If there's something else that I didn't mention that you were hoping to learn about, please let me know. I'll make sure to make some comments to whatever you comment, or a rebuttal video? Do you rebuttal to comments? Like you say, hey man, no. Reply. I'll make a reply video to your comment and make sure to cover whatever it is that you liked or didn't like. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. I've been trying really hard. And if you didn't know, it's really hot in Oklahoma. Getting the filming in when it's cool, sub 100 degrees or right at 100 degrees, I'm doing my best. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you soon.